What if the person who cannot stop thinking about you is not struggling with attraction at all, but with a truth they have spent months or even years trying to avoid? What if your presence changed something so deeply inside them that no amount of distance, silence, or distraction could ever make it go away? Sometimes the strongest connections are not the ones people openly accept. They are the ones people fight the hardest to deny. There are moments in life when we convince ourselves that love happens by accident. We tell ourselves it is nothing more than timing, chemistry, or a lucky coincidence. We assume people enter our lives through random events and ordinary situations. Yet the deeper we look into human nature, the more we begin to realize that some connections feel different. Some people arrive and leave a mark that cannot be explained by logic alone. Their presence feels familiar before it really should. Their impact reaches places inside us that words cannot easily describe. When someone chooses you in a way that goes beyond surface attraction, it is often because something within them recognized something within you long before they understood it consciously. This is the question many people spend years trying to answer. Why does one person stand out among billions? Why does someone become so attached to your energy, your voice, your presence, or the way you make them feel? Why do thoughts of you keep returning to their mind even when they are trying to move forward? Why does your absence leave a deeper mark than the company of so many others? The answer often goes much deeper than most people ever imagine. Human beings are constantly searching for something missing inside themselves. Many of our fears, desires, and unanswered questions stay hidden just beneath the surface. Often we feel pulled toward people who reflect qualities we need to find within ourselves. That is why certain connections feel so powerful from the very beginning. It is not because the other person is perfect. It is because they awakened something that has been quietly sleeping inside us for a very long time. This person did not choose you simply because it was easy or convenient. They chose you because your presence affected them in ways they could not ignore. You touched parts of them they had buried deep inside. You stirred emotions they had spent years trying to keep under control. Emotional numbness became impossible for them to hold on to. That is what makes this connection truly different. Many people can attract attention. Very few can actually inspire real and lasting change. Without even realizing it, you became a mirror for this person. And mirrors can be incredibly powerful because they show truths people often spend years trying to avoid. Through you, they saw not only who they were, but who they could one day become. Your kindness highlighted the loneliness they had been quietly carrying. Your strength exposed the areas where they felt most weak. Your honesty challenged the masks they had been hiding behind for a very long time. This is one of the main reasons forgetting you has never been easy for them. People may forget temporary pleasures. They may forget ordinary conversations, but they rarely forget the experiences that wake them up emotionally. Deep inside, they understand that this connection was not feeding their ego. It was pushing them to grow, and the human spirit is naturally drawn toward anything that holds the power to change it, even when that kind of change feels deeply uncomfortable. What makes this even more remarkable is that you may not fully understand the influence you had on them. Often the people who affect others most deeply are completely unaware of their own impact. They simply live honestly. They carry their struggles without making them everyone else's burden. They endure disappointment without becoming bitter. They keep moving forward despite setbacks. They continue caring despite the pain of the past. In a world where so much is performance, being genuinely real becomes something people never forget. What this person saw in you was not perfection. It was something far rarer than that. They saw truth, and truth always leaves a lasting impression. Many people spend their entire lives looking for something real, something they can trust, something that feels genuinely authentic. When they finally find it, it can be both comforting and frightening at the same time. Comforting because it feels right, and frightening because it demands complete honesty. Real connection has a way of removing every excuse. It asks people to face themselves honestly. It asks them to look at parts of their lives they have long ignored. It asks them to question the beliefs they have carried with them for years. That is exactly what happened here. You challenged the image this person had carefully built of themselves. Perhaps they had convinced themselves they did not need anyone. Perhaps they believed keeping an emotional distance was always safer. Perhaps they thought vulnerability was nothing more than a weakness. Perhaps they had learned to keep people at arm's length simply to avoid being hurt. Then you entered their life. Suddenly those old beliefs stopped working the way they used to. Your presence created a conflict they could not easily escape. One part of them wanted to run, while another part wanted to stay. One side wanted to protect itself. The other side wanted to finally open up. This is exactly why their behavior may have seemed inconsistent at times. Human beings often pull back from the very things they want the most. Not because those things lack value, but because they carry the real power to change them completely. Deep emotional connection awakens fear just as strongly as it awakens longing. It exposes hidden insecurities. It reveals wounds that never fully healed. It forces people to face truths they would much rather avoid. Yet there is something truly fascinating about meaningful connections. No matter how hard the mind tries to escape them, they always seem to find a way to come back. A memory appears without any warning. A familiar feeling rises to the surface. A song reminds them of a moment they thought they had long forgotten. A dream stays with them long after waking up. A random place suddenly brings your image back into their mind. These experiences are difficult to explain because they happen beneath conscious awareness. When a connection reaches the deepest layers of the mind, logic alone simply cannot erase it. That is something very important to understand. Being chosen on a deeper level has very little to do with appearance, status, or perfection. It is about resonance. It is about recognition. It is about feeling truly understood in a way that feels genuinely rare. Some people notice your outward qualities. Others connect with something much deeper inside you. The second kind of experience changes people in a permanent way. This person is reaching a point where they can no longer deny what your presence awakened inside them. What is now coming to the surface is not simply a confession of affection. It is an acknowledgement of real change. It is the realization that meeting you altered something deep within their inner world. Perhaps the greatest loss in life is not rejection itself. Perhaps it is meeting someone who awakens your soul and never finding the courage to tell them. The most life-changing people are often the ones we least expect. They are the people who quietly force us to finally meet ourselves. Relationships become fascinating not simply because emotions exist, but because people resist them so strongly. Many assume that when love arrives, it is immediately welcomed with open arms. In reality, the opposite is often true. The deeper the feeling, the stronger the urge to push it far down. Genuine connection threatens the illusion of control. It disrupts familiar patterns. It challenges comfort zones. It shakes old and deeply held beliefs. That is exactly what happened to this person. What they feel for you became too meaningful to ignore, yet too overwhelming to fully accept. So they reacted the way many people do when faced with something that could genuinely change their lives. They tried to escape it, not because it was false, but precisely because it was real. The human mind holds both desire and fear at the same time. When someone encounters a connection truly capable of transforming them, those two forces often collide directly. One side moves closer, while the other pulls away. One side seeks real connection, and the other seeks safety. The result is confusion. The result is hesitation. The result is deep emotional contradiction. If this person's behavior has ever left you feeling confused, it is because you were witnessing an invisible struggle quietly taking place within them. They were not simply deciding how they felt about you. They were trying to understand what your presence had revealed about who they really are. Their silence was not always a sign that they felt nothing. Their distance was not proof that they did not care. In many cases, it was evidence of a battle they simply did not know how to win. The more they tried to ignore what they felt, the stronger it seemed to grow inside them. The more they focused on moving forward, the more reminders kept finding their way back, because some connections do not simply disappear because we want them to. Some lessons remain until they are fully understood and accepted. Some people stay in our hearts until we face what they truly awakened inside us. And perhaps that is where this story really begins. Not with attraction, not with timing, not with coincidence, but with recognition. The recognition that certain people enter our lives for a real reason. They challenge us deeply. They transform the way we see ourselves. They help us discover parts of who we are that we never knew were there. And once that discovery happens, life can truly never go back to what it was before. More often than not, this was the result of emotions becoming too intense to keep handling alone. Many people know how to deal with attraction, but very few know how to handle true vulnerability. They understand how to charm others with ease. But when something genuinely real arrives, it asks far more of them than charm ever could. And that is when the real journey finally begins. They know how to impress people. They can entertain, joke, and keep everything easy and light. But allowing another person to see beneath the surface is a completely different experience. It means removing the protective layers they have spent years building up. And that is where the fear starts. At some point, this person realized that you were seeing more than the image they showed to the world. You noticed the loneliness hiding behind their confidence. You sensed the sadness sitting beneath their smiles. You recognized the tiredness they covered up with their strength. Knowing that someone could see past the mask made them deeply uneasy. Most people spend years building identities designed to protect themselves from disappointment. Some become emotionally distant. Others depend heavily on their independence. Some hide behind their achievements. Others use humor, control, or constant distractions. No matter what shape it takes, the purpose is usually the same. They want to avoid getting hurt. Then a connection comes along that makes all those defenses useless. You became that disruption without even trying to. Your presence woke up feelings they had pushed away for years. Memories they thought were long gone began rising back to the surface. Old emotional wounds demanded to be looked at once more. Questions they had spent years running from suddenly felt impossible to keep avoiding. Around you, staying emotionally numb was no longer something they could manage. So they pulled back, not because they wanted to lose the connection, but because every real transformation begins with discomfort. This is one of the most misunderstood things about emotional growth. People often picture awakening as a calm experience filled with clear and immediate answers. In reality, it usually begins with confusion. It shakes the foundation of who a person used to be. It brings unresolved pain to the surface. It uncovers fears that have been buried for a long time. Before understanding arrives, chaos tends to show up first. That helps explain why this person may have stepped back after moments of closeness. Why they seem distant after opening up emotionally. Why putting their feelings into words appeared far harder than it should have been. They were trying to hold on to control over emotions that refused to stay quiet. But the deeper mind has its own way of making itself heard. When feelings are pushed down on the surface, they often find other ways to come through. Thoughts return without warning during quiet moments. Memories show up without being invited. Dreams become unusually vivid. Familiar songs suddenly carry new meaning. Ordinary places turn into reminders of someone who cannot be forgotten. Even simple everyday experiences begin carrying emotional weight. The mind naturally looks for resolution when emotions are left unfinished. What is ignored on the surface often keeps working just beneath awareness. This is where deeper self-awareness begins to grow. Not as something supernatural, not as anything magical, but as repeated signs that the truth can only be avoided for so long. Life starts holding up mirrors in front of the person. The same patterns keep returning. Certain lessons continue coming back. Moments that feel like coincidences begin to feel like something more. Emotional signals keep appearing until denial becomes too exhausting to maintain. Eventually, the pressure builds to a point where hiding the truth becomes more painful than simply saying it. That is the place this person is moving toward right now. They are beginning to understand that putting distance between themselves and you never freed them from what they felt. Silence did not erase the bond. Avoidance did not loosen the attachment. If anything, stepping away only made them more aware of how much it mattered. Real emotional connections rarely just disappear because someone decides to suppress them. Often they keep growing quietly beneath the surface, slowly, steadily, patiently, they shape thoughts, feelings, and choices in ways that are not always easy to notice right away. The ego wants certainty, it wants control, it wants to protect its pride, but the deeper part of a person wants meaning. And once someone experiences a connection that holds genuine meaning, everyday distractions begin losing their grip. Short-lived pleasures no longer satisfy in the same way they once did. Surface-level conversations start to feel empty. Shallow experiences lose whatever appeal they used to have. Something deeper has been stirred awake. That is why this person is approaching an important turning point within themselves. The effort it takes to keep hiding what they feel is becoming heavier than the fear of letting it be seen. For a long time, they believed the emotions would eventually fade on their own. They assumed that time would weaken the connection between you. They expected that distance would make everything simpler and easier to handle. Instead, the connection kept developing inside them quietly and steadily in ways they never saw coming. Perhaps that is one of the most important truths about love. The emotions we resist the most strongly are often the ones carrying the most valuable lessons. They bring forward parts of ourselves we have been ignoring. They expose needs we have refused to acknowledge. They shine a light on truths we would rather not face. Eventually, honesty becomes something that cannot be pushed aside, and the longer someone runs from that honesty, the louder the heart becomes. What makes this particular connection so meaningful is that it was never built on anything shallow or surface level. It was never just about attraction. It was not based on convenience or timing. It was not born from loneliness. It was not driven by curiosity that would soon pass. The truth of it runs much deeper than any of those things. When the truth is finally spoken out loud, it carries the power to change both people involved in a real and lasting way. This person did not simply notice how you looked. They encountered something within you at a time when they were already emotionally worn out. Whether you were fully aware of it or not, your presence became a source of comfort, a place of emotional safety, somewhere they felt genuinely seen. This reflects something deeply important about how people work. We are not drawn only toward beauty. We are not drawn only toward what brings us pleasure. At a deeper level, we are often pulled toward balance. We look for people who bring us back to forgotten parts of ourselves. Sometimes one person steps into our life and shows us how to feel again after years of emotional shutdown. That is exactly what happened here. Before you came into this person's life, they may have learned how to get through each day, but they had lost the ability to truly live with an open heart. Perhaps they became skilled at appearing strong on the outside. Perhaps they learned to cover pain with confidence. Perhaps they embraced being alone so fully that they convinced themselves they no longer needed closeness with anyone. But getting through life and feeling whole are not the same thing at all. Then you entered their world. The emotional walls they had spent years reinforcing no longer felt as solid as they once were. The barriers they trusted began to give way. Not because you pushed for it, not because you demanded anything, but because your honesty made pretending feel like too much effort. True authenticity is far rarer than people tend to realize. Many people continuously adjust themselves in order to gain approval. They shift to avoid rejection. They change to keep control over how others see them. They show different versions of themselves depending on who they are with. They become whatever they think is expected of them in any given situation. But every so often, someone comes along who carries a kind of honesty that cannot be faked or copied. A quiet sincerity that feels completely natural, a depth that comes from real experience. A kind of wisdom that was shaped by pain that built them up instead of shutting them down. That was the quality this person recognized in you. And once someone truly encounters that kind of truth in another person, it becomes nearly impossible to walk away from and forget. What moved them the most was not simply the things you said. It was who you continued to be despite everything you had already been through. They watched you keep showing kindness even after being hurt. They watched you keep caring even after facing disappointment. They saw you remain compassionate when life handed you more than enough reasons to become cold. They noticed that you kept moving forward without losing the best parts of who you are. That left something lasting inside them because deep down they knew just how hard that was. They knew how easy it would have been for you to shut your heart. They understood how many people choose bitterness after they have been through pain. Yet you chose something entirely different. You chose to grow. You chose to understand. You chose to stay true to yourself. And whether they ever said so or not, they admired that more than words could ever capture. The longer they paid attention to you, the more it became clear that what they felt was not going to be temporary. It was not a passing moment of attraction. It was not simple curiosity that would wear off. It was something deeper, something that kept developing even when things became complicated between you. Something that stayed present even when distance came into the picture. Something that refused to go away no matter how hard they tried to push it aside. And that realization shifted everything for them. Because once a person sees that a connection has reached into the deepest parts of who they are, pretending becomes harder than simply telling the truth. The feelings begin asking to be recognized, the truth starts needing to be spoken, and sooner or later every person reaches a moment where they have to choose. Will they keep running from what they feel, or will they finally face the truth that has been waiting for them the entire time? That moment is arriving sooner than they think. And when it does, it may permanently change the direction of everything that comes next for them. They saw you keep your heart open even after disappointment knocked you down. They noticed the quiet and steady strength with which you carried things that most people around you never even knew you were carrying. That left a mark on them far deeper than anything spoken words ever could have.